Hello there everyone, Oath Alliance here. I just want to go ahead and give just a few words before starting this review of mine for Planetary Annihilation. There's been quite a few reviews written for Planetary Annihilation now that it's come out of early access and is full game. I finally found the time and willpower to take actually what I wrote and turn it into a video here. You will not actually be seeing any actual video gameplay footage. You'll simply be viewing pictures which I threw together to go ahead and convey my words. I'm actually pretty much reading almost word for word off of this post I made, which was my review. But before getting started, I want to clear a few things up. For those of you who don't know who I am, I have built my YouTube channel primarily off of Planetary Annihilation. I have invested $110 into Planetary Annihilation, not including the money I've spent to buy more copies to give to friends. So I do have a monetary investment. I've spent quite a bit of time at doing things for Uber in the form of trying to help them make the game better. I've spent a lot of time on their forums, casting, and running tournaments even for Planetary Annihilation. So I'm just going to put that up there for everyone to know as a giant disclaimer that yes, I do have invested interest in this game. Moving beyond that though, I have well over 300 hours in this game. So I definitely know what I'm talking about. I've played the game for quite some time, and so I do know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these things in the game. I plan on pulling no punches against Planetary Annihilation. I will not speak to anything Uber has done, simply talking about the game itself and what's going on with it. I do know the pros and cons of this game quite well. I've paid lots of attention to the forums and to people's complaints, so I have those always in the forefront of my mind, and I definitely know what I've missed out on in here. So I'm going to be attempting to maintain a certain level of quality with this entire review. I'm going to go ahead and give you an honest feedback, and none of this is edited out except if I make a big screw up of something. I'm simply going to go ahead and move on and say what needs to be said, and you'll hear me screwing up a few times. Just expect that. This isn't some sort of giant professional review where I've spent 30 hours on it and we've recorded it 6 times, and it's not going to be like a movie at all. So this is simply me sitting here at my computer reading pretty much what I wrote previously in audio form and then tossing pictures to help give you an idea of what's going on. So with all of that out of the way, I just want to let you know that I'm going to try to be objective. I will make factual statements in here, but I will also make some suppositions and opinions. I'll try to keep those separate for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Planetary Annihilation's history. A quick summation. PA started out as an idea contained within the mind of John Mavor. He previously had worked on Supreme Commander and actually at Cave Dog, working with Total Annihilation. But it came from an idea to a concept, and that concept eventually reached a point where he was able to bring it to Uber Entertainment, and Uber Entertainment was able to make something of it, and then they showed it off to everyone in the gaming world. That was in the form of a Kickstarter. That was put up, and that's actually where I first saw it. I actually watched the intro, didn't even get to the part where anyone was speaking, just watched the intro, the concept video of this is what the game we hope to look like, and I stopped it before anything else happened, and I said, that is a game for me, I'm buying this. They were actually very successful. They almost reached 2.5 times of the amount they asked for. They asked for about 900,000, and they got closer to 2 million with change. I'm not sure of the exact number. But you have to remember they lost 10% of that to Kickstarter and Amazon because that's what they require. But with that money, they started working on Planetary Annihilation. For the most part, I dropped off the development train and didn't really care until June 2013, I believe it is June 16th, 2013, that's when they released Alpha. Boy, was that a mess. And I don't mean it's a mess because it was, they did it terribly, but it was an alpha. There was not much there. It was pretty darn buggy, but it was a great foundation. The engine, at least, we could see it was working. So the basic framework was there. It was started off very good. Anyways, several months later came beta, and that introduced one of the greatest mechanics we all wanted, was planet smashing. Yes, you could destroy planets finally, or at least, run one planet into another. Soon after the new year, a few months later, Planetary Annihilation entered Gamma, which they released more social features, a nice update to replay, spectators, enlarging gameplay scope, and also they finally did a redo on the opening UI, so that it was easier to see things in the main menu. Then finally, a while later, they came out with their long-awaited procedural campaign known as Galactic War, which is since then stayed pretty much the same. It's the first pass of it given directly to us. And so now, months and months after that, finally we got it at where we are now, which is gold. On September 5th was when we got it gold. So that's the quick summation there. So now let's go ahead and move straight on into the meat of this. Graphics. Many of you will notice that more modern games have been going for a more realistic, polished look. You can look at Battlefield or any of those games. They look quite realistic. They're going for the more realistic we can get, the better the game is. They really eat up our graphics power, and that, of course, can sort of hurt our power bill. But there are a few games that are going a different way. Stylized video games aren't really nothing new. They've been around for a while, but they're making a reappearance. They've previously been towards games that had small budgets, couldn't be a lot, but some AAAs have actually been pushing it for a number of different reasons. Borderlands and The Elder Scrolls Online are two that come to mind, which went with stylized and or more cartoony looks from their possibly realistic looks. There's a lot of different reasons they did that. Some was just, we wanted to be artistically different, but towards things like Elder Scrolls Online, that at least was specifically put that way because they didn't want to eat up so much of a person's computing power for their computer. So that was at least the reason that they had given when they first started working on it, when I read the article with regards to why they were not making it look more like an actual Elder Scrolls game like Skyrim. Anyways, the reason that those games chose it was for various reasons, but ultimately that stylization leads us to Planetary Annihilation. So you'll notice that Planetary Annihilation, all of its models are pretty blocky, and its actual look of the units, their textures, are actually just simply groups of colors. So you'll get a certain amount of color here, another color here, and that's a big difference from Supreme Commander, which previously took more base models that look pretty close to Planetary Annihilation's models, but they stretched very nice textures, very high quality textures. However, the problem with that is it ate up a lot of graphics power. And Subcom was already pretty much notoriously unoptimized, and with, stretching really nice textures over these models, you suddenly got a lot of processing power and graphics power being eaten up. And Planetary Annihilation's entire point was to take what Subcom and Total Annihilation had given us and just expand upon the entire idea. 8,000 unit games of standard Subcom or Subcom Forged Alliance. Suddenly, now we're up to games where you can play with 15,000 units or more. I think we've benchmarked the game up to 40,000 or more units coming out. So tons and tons and tons of units could possibly be out on the field, I mean, and as optimization and computers get better, it can only expand upwards. So they don't want to be going with incredibly nice graphics and then burn out your computer by the time we had reached 8,000. Anyways, but that's why they ultimately avoided that entire paradigm of putting the nice textures, and it saves them time and money, because really the models are almost the same, but they don't have to take care of all the very nice textures and worry about that. That saves them a lot. So the main trade-off was to keep PA from requiring something like a Titan Z while still giving us the scale that they were hoping for. But the units are well styled, they're very nice looking. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the best things since sliced bread, but they definitely have a unique and crisp look to them. They're not badly done. And so so for the stylized look, they are very nice. So ultimately, I give graphics a 7 out of 10. Moving on to sound. Most RTS music tends to be, well, not very memorable. You know, I could probably hum a few tunes from one or two of the games I've played, the RTSs I've played, but for the most part, you don't really remember the music like you would, say, Legend of Zelda, which has very memorable music, or games like Final Fantasy. However, for Planetary Annihilation, the music they chose to put in was amazing. They started off with synthetic music that was put together just so we'd have something. But because of a stretch goal, we were going to get an actual orchestral sound. And that was done by Howard Mostrom. And he teamed up with the Northwest Symphonia, which was involved in things like Halo, making the soundtrack for that. I'm not sure which was the Halo series it was. It might have been all three, it might have just been three, I don't remember. But they together did this and made this beautiful soundtrack. I mean, I can't get out of my head half the time. It's a beautiful soundtrack. Along with that, they have a very well polished voiceover for notifications. It's not just a little annoying beep or something like that. It's actually a voice says something to you, and sometimes it can be kind of problematic. There has been an issue, I don't know if it's totally been fixed, where you'd go to start the game, you'd say, okay, I'm Wildland, and then suddenly, you know, your metal is low. I haven't even started the game, how is my metal low? So there's been a few issues with that, but very, very nice and very helpful. And it allows you to know what you need to do, or at least, you know, when you need to go back to something, without you ever having to take your eyes off of what you're doing and pay attention to notifications somewhere else. However, in the standard sound department, that's where PA lacks a little bit. They don't have a lot of differentiations in sound. They do have kind of a cute feature where bots and things will talk to each other, you know, sort of give this chattering, and that adds a little bit of character to these things, and there's some sound when you click on units. They'll make a bit of noise, but for the most part, it's more towards subcom in the fact that there's not a lot of individual sounds. I mean, things like Command and Conquer or StarCraft, you click on a unit, if they're like a human unit, and they'll go, you know, Roger, or what do you want? But in Planetary Annihilation, you don't really get that. And that's actually not something I feel is a huge problem, but it would be nice to have a little bit more differentiations in sounds of things getting destroyed and stuff like that. So that's kind of the big faulting area, other than the few bugs with the notification voice. So for that, I give sound an 8 out of 10. Gameplay. This is sort of the king of everything. This is the really important part when it comes to RTSs. Everything else can lack. This is the part that makes the game any good or really bad. Gameplay is king with RTSs, and so ultimately if the gameplay isn't good, the entire game's worthless. So PA works off a streaming economy. Players gain an infinite amount of resources based upon a set income equal to the number of producers they have. So what that means is, instead of games like StarCraft or Command and Conquer or Age of Empires, where you've got units and they just infinitely, you've got a limited amount of resources and they stick that and it goes into a stockpile, and the stockpile fills up indefinitely, or at least in Command and Conquer's things, you build silos and that fills up indefinitely. And when you buy something, you pay for it first, so you say, I want to build this building, so all of your resources magically disappear from your stockpile, and then the building gets built, and that's it. A streaming economy works off of, if you've got, let's say, something pulling in metal. It pulls in metal at, let's say, 6 metal per tick, and a tick, at least in this case, I assume is a second. Ultimately, it's sort of a non-issue because it doesn't really matter, because everything's based upon that tick in your economy, so it's not like you pull from it at this tick rate, and this pulls at a different tick rate, and everything gets all screwy. So ultimately, it pulls in things at a certain rate, so 6, and let's say every tick, because we don't know what the tick is actually equal to, or at least I don't. So you're gaining 6 every tick. And that, once it fills up in your stockpile, it's gone. But you don't have to worry about running out of, incoming resources, because they're indefinite. You can gain them for infinity and beyond, but you can only gain them at the rate. You can't put like a dozen more units on to just get the rate going even faster. You only gain them at that rate. And when you build something, your units use the resources at a certain rate, so maybe like 15 metal per tick. And so it'll first pull from your storage, and then when your storage is empty, then your economy hits a deficit and everything slows down, because you're it rations out the resources to everything. So instead of this guy, you've got 2 projects and each of them are using 15, but you've only got 6 income. Well, 3 to you, 3 to you. And metal is what your economy is based on, so you have to build things with a certain amount of metal. So streaming economies have been popular, at least towards Supreme Commander and Total Annihilation. Those are the games you'll really see have streaming economy. PA also uses TA's previous technology system, known as what you see is what you get. And simply what that means is, if you send a scout or something and look at your enemy's base, the entirety of their base, you will know exactly where they are in the game. You'll know, can they hit me with nukes? Yes or no. Can they even build nukes? Yes or no. Have they reached advanced technology stage? Yes or no. You'll know how big of a threat they are. So ultimately, you'll have a good idea. There's no special research trees or unit veterancies or anything that can, show up out of nowhere and blast you little pieces. They just made a super giant ultra mega lord monster from this secret factory they hid underground, and we can see it until the very end. Or they made their tanks 10 million times stronger, and now they're ripping through every single mine. None of that. So everything is simply what you see is what you get. No extras, no hidden powers, nothing. No research trees, no upgrades to surprise you at all. Players only have access to a single unit set. All commanders, even the ones you buy in the armory, are exactly the same. You don't have to worry about them at all. They're all exactly the same. They're just different models and a skin. So what that means is that ultimately you don't have to worry about your opponent having access to something you don't have. Let's face it, if you've ever played Supreme Commander, you know if the Aeon got out their resource generator, that was pretty much the end of the game. Sure, it took a heck of a lot of time, but as soon as they got out that resource generator, they could infinitely build anything they wanted to. And they tossed up a few shields around it, just made sure you didn't destroy it. And ultimately, they could win because they had unlimited resources. They didn't care about map control at that point. They could just build infinite units forever and never have to worry about their economy again as long as they protect it. You don't have to worry about that. You don't. Everyone's using the same unit set. And yes, it does cut down on diversity, but ultimately it's a gimmick for the fact that people like to think they're, you know, if you've got the Protoss, the humans, and the Zerg in StarCraft, everyone likes to pretend there are big important differences, and yes, there are differences, but ultimately all it is this unit's good against this unit, is good against this unit, is good against this unit, and all three groups have the same system. It's just one unit, you know, some cost very little, some cost a lot, and some cost a standard amount. And that's really all you're getting is they don't have giant gameplay differences other than for the fact that you just have to work with these very specific systems. And that makes sense sort of in a single player-esque fashion, but when you get into the competitive features or anything like that, then it becomes hard, because what if this, you know, group has an unbalanced thing? Well, I don't have access to that unbalanced unit, so where am I supposed to go? So it adds a lot of simplicity and sort of makes things easier when it comes down to things like trying to balance the game. It makes balancing a heck of a lot easier, and people can't complain that they don't have access to units that might be in need of a nerf, because you have them too, so you don't really get to complain, hey, I don't have access to that. It's unfair for you to use it, because you can. In single player, this is an area that kind of lacks. PA does not have a narrative story. You will see no special lines guiding you to anything at all, and actually PA lacks a tutorial altogether, which is something that should get fixed soon, hopefully. That's a very important thing. Something I feel they're lacking in is the support of a tutorial. However, a narrative for an RTS is, as a writer myself, it's a gimmick. Because all the game really does is it disallows you from accessing certain technologies and pushes you into certain scenarios and limit map. You know, you can't expand over the entire map. You have to overcome certain pieces of the scenario to gain access to even the entire map, and even then you may not have access to your entire amount of units. And simply then you get a storyline in it, and to be honest, the storyline generally isn't that good. I mean, you may get a few words exchanged during the actual RTS stage, and then some before and after every mission. But ultimately, it's a giant gimmick. You know, nothing really takes place. It's not like you are Gordon Freeman trying to go through, I think it was City 17, and trying to, you know, get the Combine away from there, to be rid of the Combine. It's not like you are going through an entire narrative storyline. You're simply playing through scenarios which they added on a before and after story, and then gave you a few words during the game, and that's it. It's a giant gimmick. You know, it's not even worth, you know, I mean, honestly, if they pay, they probably hardly spend any money on writers. Because I think someone in the Uber offices, if they really wanted to, I think they actually do have an author who's doing all the backstory. So if he wanted to, he could just add in some random things for the bots to say at you, and there you go. You've got a storyline. I mean, there is a storyline to Planetary Annihilation, it just doesn't force you to go through it, which is nice. You either engage with it, or you don't. PA's UI. It's minimal. It's minimal. It doesn't have a lot of the features that a lot of people like. It doesn't tell you about control groups. It doesn't give you idle worker infos or your commander's health or things like that. But one thing I really like about it is the fact that it's minimal. It doesn't get in your way. It doesn't take up half your screen. and it doesn't bombard you with lots of pieces of information or big chunks being used up simply for artistic purposes, which is nice. Because a lot of games, they have these giant chunks that have nothing on them. You know, they may have some artistic look to them, but they have nothing practical on them that can be moved somewhere else and have the entire UI minimized or more minimal than what it is. They simply put there because they're like, well, we're already using 75% of the bottom of the screen, so we might as well use the other 25% and just shove, you know, all of these icons farther apart. Planetary Annihilation gives you a lot of room for you to look around the battlefield, and it has a very nice free camera mode, which you can use to look down at units and things and get very nice screenshots and stuff like that. And so the camera is very nice. You can set anchor points and things like that. There's also a thing called picture-in-picture, which I'll actually be talking about in the next section. But that is sort of the answer to the mini-map on these spherical planets. Sadly for PA though, optimization and pathing bugs cause quite a few issues. Uber is still working on them, just like any game that comes out. You know, you've always got those bugs from the release, and they're definitely working on them, which is good. But they still do exist. And actually, there's also bugs that exist that keep people from playing the game, which is a very, very bad thing, and which is definitely hurts the entire case for this game, and also hurts them in this section. And as I mentioned before, PA lacks a tutorial. Players may find it really hard to start up and find it very confusing. People who've played Total Annihilation or Supreme Commander will find similarities, but it's still kind of a different beast. And it took me quite a bit of time to get used to the game itself, so the learning curve can be very intimidating and can be quite hard, and without an actual tutorial, it can make the game really hard to play. So ultimately, I'm going to give Uber a 7 out of 10 in gameplay. Innovation. This section is ultimately where PA has had its biggest claims, is innovation. PA has gone somewhere where RTSs have actually never gone before. They've moved beyond the simplistic viewpoint of flat maps. They no longer use those, and not even the gimmicks which things like Sins of a Star Empire or Homeworld used, where they gave you this three-dimensional box to move units in, but ultimately, in the end, you know, it's just one giant flat map with airspace. And even then, flanking and things like that didn't matter at all in those games. So, in PA, you play on spheres, which is a lot different from flat maps, because you can be attacked from every direction. There is no technically safe point for you to hide in. There's no corner. You can put up a bunch of weapons and things like that around so that you don't get hurt. So you can't just not do anything. You can't just build up a wall and build a bunch of super units and send them out. You have to expand, you have to build outwards, and you have to flank your opponent, or else they'll flank you and ultimately crush you. Planetary Annihilation also goes to multi-planet systems. So now you're playing on multiple maps at the same time. And you have to divide your attention between multiple maps. So it's not just, you know, this small battlefield here or this other small battlefield here. It's suddenly, I'm trying to build a base on this one planet while trying to fight a war on this other planet while trying to send units through this other planet. And it forces you to think a lot more strategically because you're having to run a lot more. You're not clicking a ton. It's not a bunch of micromanagement. Instead, it's a bunch of macro management over a lot of different things. And what also allows is a third sort of the fourth group. You've got ground, you've got air, you've got naval, and now you've got orbital. So now you don't have to worry only about bombers coming in, but you also have to worry about things from space firing down onto your planet. PA offers a new system for minimap. I mentioned it before. Picture-in-picture is a very interesting concept. It is something that I've originally saw sort of in Supreme Commander, was another map which you could use, but picture-in-picture is a map that you can use pretty much exactly the same as the one you're looking at. You can give orders through it, you can give commands, you can reposition it wherever you want, you can get to view the position you're at, you can flip cameras so that what was in picture-in-picture is now what you're viewing, and what you were viewing is now in picture-in-picture, and you can move it just like any other camera. And so it's a very interesting thing. You can look at different worlds, different parts of the battlefield, and use it to keep up on things. And ultimately what Uber wanted to do with this, and as far as I know they still plan on doing it, is making picture-in-picture something you can actually expand and move to another monitor. They've yet to do that, but that's something they did originally plan. I don't know where that is at this moment, but hopefully we'll see something from it soon because it has great potential. Previously in other games and other RTSs, I've played lots of RTSs. My list goes from Command & Conquer all the way through StarCraft, through Age of Empires, and to Homeworld, and then Sins of Solar Empire, and Supreme Commander, and even a bit of Total Annihilation, and now Planetary Annihilation. And one thing I've never actually seen is a notification system quite like this. So for Planetary Annihilation, you have a notification system that not only gives you alerts that appear on the top, but if you move your mouse over them, you'll actually get a small, sort of a picture-in-picture view that allows you to see where that alert is taking place. So if your commander is under attack, you move your mouse over it, you'll actually show your commander being under attack. And if you click on it, you'll actually zoom over to where that alert is taking place. It'll put your camera there, which is something I have seen in games, but never you actually get to view a video of what's going on, where something's going on, which is something that's really nice because you can actually check, is this something important? Oh, no, it's not. My scout got killed because he flew over an enemy anti-air. You know, you don't really have to go, oh my word, I have to click there and go view it or whatever. And so it allows you to sort of give a choice. You get the choice to say this is important or I don't give a rip. In PA also, super weapons, way beyond super. Nukes are secondary. Screw the nukes. In Planetary Annihilation, at this time, you've got two ultimate super weapons. You can strap on Halleys, which are giant rockets, onto planetoids, certain planetoids, and launch them at your opponent's base. And watch them rip his base to shreds. Or, if you've got a metal planet, you can throw on these things called catalysts, and what those do is create a super laser to destroy planets. And you can destroy an incoming planet which has rockets on it with that super laser also. Or you can destroy the super laser by landing a planet on it and completely putting it out of commission. Finally, modability. Modability is one of the big things that Planetary Annihilation was given, was that you can make lots of mods where it's going to be easy to mod, it's not going to be really hard, and that thing is something they've kept their promise on. They've done a great job. Mods have been out since pretty soon after alpha. I don't even think it was beta before the first few mods were coming out. And right now, if you go to places like PAMatches.com, you can find lots of mods. It's pa-mods.com. And you can find lots and lots and lots of different things, different mods for you to use. And so Planetary Annihilation is very, very mod friendly. And there's even mods out there that change the entire unit composition, add new units in, things like that. So if vanilla is not quite the flavor you like, perhaps one of those can satisfy you, or you can get in contact with the modders and possibly talk to them, get some help making your own mod, or at least get them to, try and make your own mod if you can convince them of that. So for innovation, PA gets a whopping great score of 9 out of 10. Failings. This section is sort of a reverse of the others. The more failings there are, the worse the score is. And this is going to just sort of list the things that Uber has said these were things that were supposed to be, but they aren't, mainly, and other problems. So these are kind of the faults of the game at this time. Ladders and matchmaking. So, as you know, esports these days is really big. It's a huge thing. Lots of players are using it because it allows for competitiveness and keeps games in the limelight for a long time. Look at League of Legends. StarCraft is starting to die out, but now we've got things like Hearthstone. So, competitive is a big thing, and esport and ladders and matchmaking all help to do that. Uber did not release that with the actual release. However, I did talk to the guys at Uber while I was at PAX, and yes, it's coming. I don't know when, but it's coming. However, the good news is that in the absence of actual vanilla support, there is PA stats, which is in place of the PA ladder, and it has a connected matchmaking system. And you can find that, like I said, at PA-mods or at the Uberent Forums. Just go to the modding section and you can find it there. Offline and servers. Two pretty important things. Servers and offline were supposed to be two things that were coming at release so that people could play single-player games, and servers so that you could set up your own, host a LAN party, things like that. Those have yet to come out. However, the good news is, unlike other things like Assassin's Creed or Battlefield or new Sims game, is the fact that Uber is working on it and they're trying to get all packaged up. So we do know it's coming eventually. We don't know when, but it's at least coming, which gives us hope, at least. Save games. Save games is a problem because even though I've never actually felt the need to use a save game for Planetary Annihilation, because my matches against the AI at least generally last anywhere between about 7 minutes to 20 usually, unless I'm taking an extraordinary amount of time. But ultimately, save games are something that people generally like to have, especially newer players, because they play for a long period of time, because they aren't about destroy, kill, win, move on to the next one. And without save games, we're going to have a problem. However, save games, when Uber's first came out with the idea, their save games was actually amazing, a great idea. They were going to tie it to the replay system, so that you could load up the replay and go to any point in there and resume playing. I don't know how that would work if you're playing against another player, but you could pull back the time and all of the units and everything, all of the counts, all of the economy, everything would start up from that point in time. So if you wanted to see what would happen if you played a different way against someone and they wanted to do the same thing as well, you could pull back to that time period and play from there. In which case, save games and replays would be the exact same thing. So it would be a revolutionary system, and that would work with their replay system, which is known as ChronoCam, which at this time, I actually probably should have talked about this in Innovations, which allows players to zoom through time during the game, the actual gameplay. You can go back in time and view something, or you can use it just like any other replay system, go back in time, pause it, speed it up, slow it down. When Uber first came, during the Kickstarter, Uber said, we want to make it so the game can support up to like 40 players. 40 player games. That'll be something epic you can do. At this time, you cannot, on vanilla, play 40 player games. You can only play up to 10 players. However, the good news is that 40 player games can be done. I have played a 36 player game. That was done by a mod. All that Uber is doing is restricting it so that they don't burn down their server space that they're renting from Amazon. But you can actually play 40 player games if you simply remove that limit. So it's in there, but Uber's dealing with optimization. So as far as we know, once optimization gets better, we'll have that. And also you'll be able to do them with your own servers. However, PA is also plagued with a number of bugs, which, as I mentioned before, cause it to be unplayable for quite a number of players. And also lots of issues with lag and optimization issues, units getting locked up in areas because of pathfinding bugs. So there's a lot of issues, and the fact that it's still always online. A lot of people have issues with bandwidth usage and just getting their computers to communicate with the server sim. So sadly, all of this ultimately culminates to a 4 out of 10 in failings. Replayability. This is the big score in terms of, is the game worth it? As I've said, I've played over 300 hours of Planetary Annihilation, and I still pick up the game now and then and play it. Every battle changes. Every time you fight an AI, it seems different. Different maps, different places. You can fight all sorts of people online. And what really makes PA unique is the fact that every battle you fight is different. You never play to the same way. Even when you're fighting an AI, you just simply change the map, play anything, and it suddenly changes how everything happens. Sadly, however, like all RTSs, PA is made of skirmishes, so it's not something you'll probably invest 30 hours of your time to, within the first 2 days. You probably won't play it for 12 hours a day. But it will be a game that you can pick up, you can play, and you can set down, and you can come back the next day, and you can pick up, you can play for an hour or so, you can set it down, just like most RTSs. And it actually, other than the fact that, you have to take it in bite-sized chunks, it's a very good game, and it's a game that I keep on picking up. So PA makes a very strong case for RTS replayability, in my opinion. So for that, I give it a 7 out of 10 in replayability. So conclusion here. Perhaps right now, PA probably not the most impressive game on the market. I can probably name off some other games that look more interesting, have more features, and have things that, people enjoy. It lacks quite a few of the features that a lot of us gamers take for granted, and has quite a few bugs and optimization issues that need to be taken care of. However, saying that, PA has a huge redeeming quality. It's not finished. Even though we're past the big 1.0 push out and all of that, I talked to Uber, and do you know what they said? It's just a number. It's ultimately just a number. Just like it was for WoW, or for League of Legends, or for a number of games out there. Minecraft comes to mind. For PA, for Planetary Annihilation, all it is just a stepping stone into them getting more out there. So ultimately, Planetary Annihilation isn't finished by a long run. And as long as they continue to work on it, and as long as they continue to push these things in there and meet all of these ideas and innovations that they've put forward, as long as they can keep this up and keep pushing those out, Planetary Annihilation may become one of the best RTSs in the 21st century, one of the most interesting and innovative RTSs. And that will put Uber and Planetary Annihilation in a place of legends. And so for a final concluding score, it is 7 out of 10. So some afterthoughts. Uber has had issues with trying to relay good and correct information to players. Their PR department is lacking, to say the least. Players are often told about things. We're not doing certain things very soon to the time when they won't be implemented. There's been a great deal of confusion of what was going to be in the release. There's not a lot. They're not working very hard to correct a lot of the misconceptions that people are getting. So ultimately, they lack. But one thing which is unacceptable, greatly unacceptable, is it's the fact that there are people in the gaming community at large who are attacking Planetary Annihilation on its failings, but not simply attacking them on its failings, but also spreading misinformation about the game. And when PA veterans like myself and others attempt to correct them and say this is actually what's going on and give them the actual information that we have and that's out there, we are being attacked. And even though I wouldn't say that's even the gaming group in general, but people are attacking Planetary Annihilation veterans who are just trying to help, who are trying to pick up the slack which Uber's PR department is not grabbing itself. They're being attacked as fanboys, as apologists, as all of these things, just simply name calling. And it is unacceptable. It is absolutely uncalled for and unacceptable. Be civil. Don't when someone tells you, hey, that's not correct, here's the right answer, here's what's actually going on, don't attack them. Be civil about it. If you disagree with them on principle or an argument, then say, I disagree with you on principle or an argument, and here's why. Don't simply go, well, you must be a fanboy. Because at that point, you are kind of making yourself look like an idiot. And your entire argument is worthless, at least to me. With that said, I just want to conclude this in saying that this review was written with the sole intent of giving an informative and relatively accurate review of Planetary Annihilation, where it is currently and what is coming, and what we as players know from Uber. This actual post, this video review, will not be updated with anything that comes in, and I will not be correcting anything that was misstated or putting in correct information if I got something wrong. I will, however, link below to my actual post that I wrote for my own blog, which was the original review I made in writing. And there I will put edits as things change. I may do an updated version of this later on, only talking about the things that have changed and where the new standing is, but this will not be particularly updated. If you have any more questions for me, feel free to contact me on Twitter @OathAlliance or on the Uberent Forums at Oath Alliance. For more Planetary Annihilation related info, I suggest you check out Planetary Annihilation Matches or PAMatches.com. Just want to thank you all for watching this video. I, of course, am Oath Alliance, and this has been my comprehensive Planetary Annihilation review. Stay strong. Game on.